Good afternoon and welcome to this week's episode of Sunday Night Live, the automotive show where we talk about all things automotive. Front, back, doesn't really matter. We cover it all because the better we all get, it helps everybody. What I try to do is bring on the experts in their fields to share with us some of the tips and tricks from an insider's point of view that helps you in running your store. And today we have a special guest, Nathaniel Ebel, and he's in the transportation business. And we all know that nothing happens without transportation. To quote my friend Tim Scoutlas, inventory is like a block of ice on hot asphalt. The minute you own it, it starts to melt or lose value. Maybe not in today's artificial bubble, but rest assured, when that bubble pops, and I'm predicting second quarter of 2022, there are varying opinions on it, but what's happening now is unnatural. We enjoy it. It's great for business. Dealers are making money hand over fist. But it's going to come to an end, and there will be a time where we go back to pre-COVID, where we're complaining about not enough people coming through the doors, and that inventory carrying cost is choking us. So now, while things are great, now is the time to brush up and polish your skills and learn about the things that'll help your business thrive for when that bubble goes pop. It's very important. And the reason I wanted Nathaniel on here today is specifically because today, where we have little to no inventory, it's even more crucial that that vehicle get to your lot as quick as possible. But I want you to know that not all transporters are created equally. They're not all nice guys. So it's very important to know who you're dealing with. And I'm going to relate two stories to you. The first one is my friend Ellie had her Porsche Cayman transported from Florida up to Connecticut, because they're snowbirds. And much to her surprise, when the car arrived in Connecticut, she was instructed by the transporter to pay up a few $100s in cash. Now, she never carried cash, so they literally had to go to an ATM machine to withdraw cash to hand to the driver, or he threatened to not leave her car behind. That's one episode. The other episode was I had hired a company to transport a 4Runner from Westport, Connecticut to Texas, where the client was. And unbeknownst to me, the transporter took the car up to Massachusetts. What we didn't know was that there was going to be a massive hurricane up in Massachusetts. So what ended up happening is with the winds, it blew out every piece of glass in that 4Runner. And the vehicle was a total loss. Between the rain and the broken glass, the 4Runner was totaled. And when the car got to Texas, the driver said to the owner, "You got to pay up or I'm not dropping the vehicle." So I said to the owner, I said, "Listen, I want you to do me a favor. Take out your cell phone, take a picture of the truck, take a picture of the driver's license, and take a picture of the driver. And then just let me know, text me when you have those 3 bits of information. And I'll speak with the driver, and I'm sure I could talk some sense to him." So Ken sends me a text. All set. I got the pictures. So I called the driver. I said, "Listen, I understand there's a little problem with the delivery, and the legal owner of the vehicle that's on your truck is telling me that you're refusing to drop the vehicle and release it to them." Now, I don't know Texas law, but I know in Connecticut, they would refer to that as grand theft auto. And just so you know, the legal owner of that vehicle that's on your truck has your picture, your truck's picture, and your license plate. So depending on what you do after we hang up the phone determines how far you're going to get before the state troopers pull you over. So it's really up to you. But I suggest you do the right thing. Now, I knew what to do and what to say, but the average consumer, and maybe a lot of dealers don't. They might have paid up. Like my friend Ellie actually took cash out. I said, "Why didn't you call me?" She said, "Well, it was 11. I didn't want to bother you." I said, "I don't care if it's 2 in the morning. You can bother me because it's not a bother." So I get a call back a short time later from the owner of the 4Runner in Texas. He says, "I don't know what you told that guy, but as soon as he got off the phone with you, he didn't say a word to me, but he took my truck off the transporter and left it with me, got in his truck and drove away." So those are 2 ways that the story can play out. But before we even get there, know who you're dealing with. All right, so without any further ado, Nathaniel, welcome to the show, man. Why don't you tell everybody a little bit about you and what you do, how long you've been in the business, what drives you, and stuff like that. No pun on the drive.
Yeah, thanks, Paul. I appreciate it. Definitely appreciate the time and glad to be on the show. So, like you said, my name's Nathaniel Ebel. I'm the managing partner with ASAP Transport Solutions, and we're based here in Kansas City. So heart of America, can't get any more centralized, but we do business all over the country. I've personally been in the freight world, the freight industry for about 10 years. But specifically with the auto industry, primarily moving vehicles for the last 5 or 6 years. And so we work with 100 plus dealerships and auctions and wholesalers, and then just individuals as well. And so, we're real excited to be on the show and, be involved with what you're doing. And definitely excited to kind of banter back and forth a little bit, kind of talk about some pretty relevant topics within the dealership industry today and really with where business is today. So I appreciate the time, Paul.
Awesome. Well, thanks for being on. So maybe you could define for us the difference between a vendor and a partner as it relates to the auto transport business and dealerships. Oh, but before you answer that, I want to say hi to Michael Larkin, my good old buddy from West Hartford, Connecticut, Ty Thompson. I think you know Ty, right?
I do. Yeah, Ty, how are you, man?
This is Hey, Nathaniel and Paul, and John Neeb says hi. Welcome, gentlemen. All right, so tell us the difference between vendor and partner in the transportation world as it relates to dealers.
Yeah, absolutely. So, we all understand, obviously, dealerships have vendor after vendor after vendor for basically everything you can imagine, whether it be their website, their, different marketing, insurance, financing. I mean, there's vendors for about everything. And a lot of dealerships, they just kind of throw transport in there as that's just another vendor. It's not even like a second thought for a lot of folks, which I know we'll get to a little later in the show that it should be. But a lot of times it's just kind of a second thought. It's really just kind of an afterthought until you really need them, that it's just another vendor. But we've kind of taken the approach, and I've personally taken the approach over the years, that a vendor is there to obviously kind of fill a gap or fill a need for your dealership, but a partner is a little bit even a step further. A partner in transport is a little bit more of, hey, I'm an extension of your business. I'm an extension of your dealership. Quite frankly, I'm here to help you win deals. Quite frankly, I'm here to help you assist your customer, just as if I was standing right next to you, on the showroom. And so we kind of take the approach, kind of the philosophy of, we want to be your partner. We want to help you close more business, win more deals, have a broader reach than just right there at your dealership, and ultimately help your client and care for your client just like you would as a salesperson or as a general manager or anybody like that. So maybe it's just a way of thinking about it, but I think a partner, a strategic partner, is just kind of that next level up as far as that relationship, knowing the fact that it's there to help you win business compared to maybe just one of the other 50 vendors that a dealership might have to help run their day-to-day stores.
Well, the other thing too is that you tend to, when you rely on transportation, you develop a relationship with a company, and you kind of know where you stand, and they know what your needs are, and they're going to be more responsive. Okay, one of the big complaints that dealers have with the transportation industry is that there doesn't seem to be accountability a lot of times. Right. So I'll hire somebody, or I'll go through a broker, let's say, and I don't know any of the end users, any of the drivers, and I'm promised, I'm paying for the car already. I bought it. The clock's ticking. I'm paying for it.
Right.
In the meantime, I'm promised the car is going to be here Thursday. Thursday comes and goes. There's no car. Sometimes Friday comes and goes, and there's no car. Right. And then guess who you can't get a hold of? The driver, right? So dealing with a company that you build a relationship with makes it a whole nother situation.
Absolutely. And, a lot of our clients, a lot of our dealerships, we've been transporting their inventory for years, some of them 5, 6, 7 years or more. And, whether it's just maybe a dealer trade where they're, sending a unit out, getting another unit back from a similar store, or maybe they're buying full truckloads from different auctions, the Manheims or the Odessas of the world, or maybe they have a client that's out of state. Maybe they have a internet lead, or maybe they have somebody who purchased from out of state, and they just need to get that car from their dealership lot out to that person in a different state. Whether, in any of those scenarios, you got to have good communication. I think that's really where it all starts. And that kind of leads into what you were saying. That's really where it all starts. And if you don't have any way of really knowing who you're dealing with because of that relationship that's been built time over time, it does make it challenging. And as a salesperson or a general manager for a dealership, if you can't give a solid answer and you don't have a good response to that client who's saying, hey, my car is supposed to be here today, I haven't heard anything at all, what's going on, where, when's it going to be here? And if that salesperson doesn't have a good answer, it makes them look bad, and it kind of puts a bad taste in the customer's mouth potentially when it doesn't need to. And so, again, we've kind of taken the approach that communication is one of, there's a few, but the communication is one of the most important things in this whole transport industry. And it's crazy. Well, in life, yeah, absolutely, you're right. And it's crazy to me how sometimes that's either overlooked, or people are just bad at communicating. They're poor communicators. And so yeah, the general manager, the sales manager, the salesperson who is trying hard, working hard, doing his due diligence to make a sale, he needs to have that confidence, and he needs to have that reassurance in the back of his mind that, hey, when somebody says that car is going to be there next Friday or this upcoming Monday or whatever day it is, that's when it's going to be there. And not get the voicemail after voicemail after voicemail, or no return on a text or whatever it may be, because we hear all those stories all the time too. Hey, I fired my last company because they just would never respond, or it'd be 3 days late and I would never get an update, or, things like that. And we do hear that stuff a lot, but it's nice to be able to reassure our clients and our dealerships that, hey, listen, communication is going to be actually one of our priorities. It's not just kind of an afterthought that, doesn't matter, because it's one of the most important things. So.
Now, at the dealer level, I'll be honest, I didn't know that much about transportation. It wasn't until I hooked up with Ty Thompson and the Jay Wurzberger on Auto Transport Intel on YouTube that I really knew much about it at all. And I've learned a lot from these guys. But I bet you the average dealer today doesn't really know what happens behind the scenes. When you pick up the phone and you call somebody, there's a lot that goes on behind the scenes, right? Oh, yeah. The dealer may think, hey, I'm calling Nathaniel, and Nathaniel's the guy in the truck, and he's going to show up on Thursday because that's what he said. But that's not necessarily the case. We have brokers, we have central dispatch, we have a lot of different things that happen behind the scenes that most people don't know about. Maybe you could walk us through when somebody picks up the phone, what happens when it goes to central dispatch? What happens when it goes to a company like you? What are the differences and benefits of doing one over the other, and what are the downsides?
Yeah. Well, before I do that, let me just give a little shout out to Jay and Ty. They run an awesome show. I've been a part of their show in the past as well. Always like talking with those guys. So little plug in for those guys. Great show. But yeah, there is a very big misconception, maybe even from the dealership level, that it's just as simple as picking up a phone call and then the truck's going to magically appear in 1 hour. They're going to pick it up and it's going to go across country in about 6 hours, and then the customer is going to be happy in about 8 hours. Like that's kind of the misconception of it all, is that there's no coordinating, there's no logistics, if you will, that has to be handled. There's a lot to it, is really what I'm getting at. And again, you're right. I think there are a lot of folks who have maybe even been in the auto industry for years and years don't truly know. So the simplest way is that it goes through several different people typically to finally get to the driver, who finally goes and actually picks up and ultimately delivers. But I guess to speak to your point, I know central dispatch, I'll speak to that first, is really pretty well known. I mean, if you've been in the auto world or the dealership industry really for any amount of time, you're probably at least halfway familiar with central dispatch. And I think I kind of come from a little bit of a neutral view, because like you said, there's pros and cons to everything.
Yeah.
Like central dispatch as an example, a lot of dealerships use central dispatch, or maybe it's kind of their backup if their normal guy isn't available or something like that, which is fair. I think some of the pros and cons to central dispatch is, especially kind of on the pro side, is you can, if you're registered with central dispatch, with almost every dealership can be, you can post out a car, and usually if you have decent pricing on it, usually you can get it moved in a relatively decent time frame. And there you go. So I think that's kind of the main thing. It's pretty inexpensive to use central dispatch. I mean, you can usually see the W-9 and the insurance for a lot of the carriers to at least kind of vet them a little bit. So I think there's definitely some pros to it. You can kind of do that yourself. It doesn't take a ton of skill. It's pretty self-explanatory, if you want to call it that. I guess kind of on the flip side of the coin is you don't fully know the type of equipment that's going to be used. It might be a 1989 truck with a 1975 trailer. I mean, we've ran across things where, I mean, it would be amazing that actually passed inspection to even be legal on the road. You don't necessarily have all of the confidence in the world in that specific driver that's coming to pick up your inventory, because you don't know them. It's literally just a random person calling you because they saw your post on the load board of central dispatch.
If I could jump in,
yeah,
in layman's terms, it's almost like a dating site.
It really is.
You're putting a message out there, NCD, new car dealer, looking for transporter to take car from New Jersey, Elizabeth, New Jersey to Houston, Texas.
Yep.
And now that goes on this like a message board.
Yep.
And now people can look at that and look at all the jobs that are there. And okay, so one of the problems today with transportation is not having a full load.
That's right.
That costs you money. That truck's got to be full every step of the way. So when you have a lot of postings, now you've got drivers looking, okay, so I'm going to be in Elizabeth, New Jersey tomorrow picking up another car, and I'm headed over towards Texas. So now you can bid on that job, but nobody really knows. And to your point, an 89 truck with a 75 trailer, nobody really knows.
Yeah. Well, and just to speak to that even further, a lot of the dealerships that do use, what we've found at least, is a lot of the dealerships that do use central dispatch, and again, there's pros and cons to it, so it's not necessarily one way or the other, but they're investing a lot of time into posting out the loads, tracking and tracing the shipment, figuring out the right pricing if they can, because a lot of times they don't really know the strategy and pricing. They just kind of say, oh, I think this is reasonable, so let's toss out a price. Or, oh, I might have moved this for this price a year ago, so that's what it's got to be today, of course, right? And so, right, that's not it at all, right? But, there's a lot of, what we've seen is it eats up a lot of time, because if you post out a load that you need moved, you might field 5, 10, 15, 20 phone calls from different drivers calling in saying, hey, I want that load, or hey, tell me about it, or hey, can I get some information, or any of these things. And at the end of the day, once you decide on a driver, finally get all of the correct information, get it dispatched out to them, and then hopefully their estimated pickup time and delivery time is accurate. After everything's said and done, we've heard anything from 2 to 4 hours of time eaten up. And that probably doesn't even include the communication or lack of communication with that driver in transit. But we've heard anywhere between 2 to 4 hours just to be able to get a load moved. And that might be on the high side, especially if you use central dispatch regularly and are really, well tuned with it. But for most people, I mean, having a resource or having a good quality partner that you can literally send an email, send a quick text, or send a quick phone call to say, hey, I have a car in Dallas that needs to go to Los Angeles. Can you give me a quote? They give you a quote within 2 or 3 minutes. And then if that's good enough for them, they can get it booked right then and there, and it literally takes all of about 5 minutes. That's a little bit different story, and you don't have to worry about any of the headache or anxiety that might come from not knowing really what's going to happen once it's even picked up. And so, again, pros and cons to everything, but what we've seen is that, again, having that partner, kind of that go-to, somebody you can literally pick up the phone, or shoot a quick email to. Yeah, one call, exactly, man. One call, you can literally get everything done that you need, get pricing within a minute, and get everything done, and you're going to be confident in it is the biggest thing. I guess kind of one other aspect, just because you had mentioned it, from the broker side of things, it's actually, again, pros and cons to everything. We all understand this, but it's actually super beneficial to be working with a broker if it's the right broker. Now let me say that. Let me say that very differently, but carefully. There are a lot of brokers out there, several really, really good ones, and we all know the story about the rest. There's a lot of bad ones, and they all get a bad reputation. Not all brokers are bad by any means. And here's why. If you get a solid, reputable partner relationship and they're a broker, that just opens up the floodgates to options for you. And let me just kind of explain that. The broker might not have his own truck. They might not be asset based, so maybe they don't have a whole bunch of trucks themselves. They don't have a fleet. But what they do have is they have a really, really, really strict vetting process. They should, at least. Yeah. And so they're going to be super careful and super diligent on how they go about vetting different carriers to make sure that you and your customer are taken care of properly, to make sure that that set of inventory, whether it's 1 unit or a load of 8 or 9, is taken care of in the right way. But what it does for you is, if you have, whether you're using central dispatch or, your old buddy from 10, 20 years ago that's always done your freight, he may have 1 or 2 trucks, and that's great. But what if he's not going through your lane or taking your car from where you are to that area you need it to go to within the next day or 2 that you need it done? So if you have a good broker who knows what he's doing, that's another tip there, who knows what he's doing, typically they can make things happen a little bit faster. And quite honestly, they have the industry knowledge, if they know what they're doing. They have the industry knowledge, the experience, and typically the skill set to be able to get you the best price at the best quality of service. So now, again, pros and cons to everything, though.
Now, pricing, you bring up an interesting point, because pricing, unless you've done a lot of shipping, people don't always know, is it a fair price or not? So talk to me about what goes into pricing? I'm sure it's not just mileage. There's got to be a lot of things involved.
Oh yeah, there's I would say there's upwards of 10 or 12 different pieces of information that goes into setting pricing. And you just hit the nail on the head. A lot of folks think, well, it's point A to point B, this many miles, so it's got to cost this amount based on just that mileage. And it's just not accurate. That's not realistic. But portraying the fact that it's not realistic can sometimes be a little bit challenging. Mileage definitely does take a front seat, I guess, but there's a lot of other categories that you got to consider, or it just doesn't make sense. So I'll give you one or two examples, and that'll kind of tie into a couple of these points. So let's just say Dallas to Miami, Florida. Dallas, Texas to Miami, Florida. That's a great lane. There are trucks going back and forth from Dallas to Miami multiple times a day, and capacity in most cases is not ever an issue. Dallas to Florida, great lane, capacity is not normally an issue. So your pricing can be, I would say, even a little lower, 5 or 10% lower than maybe some other lanes, even the same mileage. Now, the problem, though, is that when the market flips, or the season flips, or the time of year flips, and then from Dallas to Miami is a horrible lane and capacity is terrible in that lane, but Miami to Dallas, that lane, that, I guess you could say it's not a backhaul, but that lane is a better lane. So knowing those types of things is first of all, takes time, takes experience, takes understanding. But just because the mileage is the same doesn't mean that the rate is the same. It might cost $1,000 to go from Dallas to Miami on an open trailer, and it might cost $1,500 to go from Dallas to wherever else for the same mileage. And so mileage plays a role. Capacity plays a big role. If there's not that many trucks in that area, or if there's not that much business going on in a specific area for whatever reason, means that there's probably not that many trucks going through that specific area, which means the rates are typically going to be quite a bit higher, because if a truck is going to go to an area that doesn't have much freight, he's got to make his money somewhere, whether it's going up or coming out. And so the rates are typically higher. I think seasonality definitely plays a role. I mean, you can't send a truck to Denver during December or January and not expect to pay a little bit more. It's just what it is. Sending a truck to Phoenix, Arizona during some of the big Barrett-Jackson auctions, you're going to have to play with capacity. I mean, there's just different things like that where, maybe some folks don't take consideration of that play a huge role with us as far as pricing and strategy and capacity and transit times, things like that. Another thing, I mean, there's a lot. I mean, there's 10 or 12 different things, but, snowbird season, that's one. I know you had mentioned that with your friend, but, folks from the Northeast coming down to, let's just say, Florida as a primary example.
Yeah, that
is a absolute madhouse for a couple months. So finding capacity for single units is very difficult, and it's much higher. And it's 30-40% higher on the price than it would be most other times of the year. And then same thing on the reverse. Different time of the year, Florida back up to the Northeast, say Boston, say New York, say Philadelphia, Connecticut, even. It flips. And so just understanding the markets, understanding different lanes plays a big role. And then the last thing I'll even say right now, because we're talking right now in today's world, is we don't have to deep dive into this, but there is a little bit of a situation with lack of drivers. Now, people have different opinions about it and whatnot, but statistics show that there is a lack of drivers out there. And so if you don't have enough drivers to fill trucks to fill capacity, that goes back to the capacity issue or topic, then prices are going to be high. It's just supply and demand. So those are a handful. There's plenty more we could probably talk about if we had more time, but those are a few of the main ones.
And, we talk about some simple lanes, New York or Connecticut to Florida, or Florida to Texas. But there's a lot of times, too, where it's not a straight shot, right?
Yep.
So your vehicle is going to be picked up in Connecticut, but it may go to a hub
Yeah.
in Philadelphia, where it gets picked up by yet another transporter to take it further on its way. So they're not all a straight shot, because
That's right.
you've got to coordinate. The transporter's goal is to fill the load.
That's right.
And let's face it, they're not all, unless you're filling a Stinger with one dealer's inventory, taking it to another of their locations across the country. I mean, that would be ideal, but that's not the reality, right? Especially now when there's a shortage of cars and we're scraping cars from wherever the hell we can get them. So
right.
I have a car in Phoenix, I might have a car in Ohio, I might have another car in Pennsylvania. I mean, these cars are spread out, and we don't have the luxury of necessarily being able to buy 20 at a clip.
That's right. Yeah, and that would be the ideal situation for both the dealership and the transport company, is to, let's just say, have a 9-car hauler. They pick up all 9 units at the same location, one pickup, one delivery, as simple as can be. But yeah, just to speak to your point, that's a lot less common in today's world. You know, years ago, that was very common.
Yeah.
2 or 3 years ago, very common. This last year and really this year, it's become a lot less common, because you're right. The inventory is so thin. Dealerships are literally just scrounging around anywhere and everywhere they can find anything to buy. And it could, and a lot of times, I'm not even saying sometimes, and a lot of times, it's states away.
Yeah.
It's at an auction that is halfway across the country. You know, we work with a lot of folks in every state. I mean, we have business in virtually every state. And we hear all the time, yeah, I had to buy a load of 9 out of Manheim, Philadelphia. Well, that dealership's in Houston. Or we had to buy some units out of Columbus, Ohio. Well, that dealership is in Salt Lake, Utah. Yeah, I mean, it's just wherever. And so again, you know, having those connections, having that resource as a partner, which is really kind of the main theme here, is as a partner, allows that dealership to be nimble. It allows them to be quick on their feet, so to say, with that transporter, to be able to say, hey, I got units here, I got units here, I got units here, and to be able to operate and be efficient in doing that within a couple days. And so, you know, another thing that you just had mentioned, but timing is also another thing. Transit times play a massive role in dealership success today, because of the lack of inventory. They need cars on their lot when they buy them as soon as physically possible. And one thing that we've seen over the years that's helped our success is that we've been able to deliver. We've been able to operate quite a bit faster than a lot of other folks have. And, you know, we all know time is money. You know, we hear that all the time. And in the car business, that cannot be any more true. And so if we, or, you know, if your transport partner can get you your car that you just bought a day or 2 or 3 days faster than the other guy, that's incredibly valuable. Because in today's world, that car is going to be sold in a day or 2 or 1 or 2 hours. And
it might be sold already.
Exactly.
Saying, where's my car? I want to pick it up. They bought it off the pictures.
And if you wait too long, or that transporter takes too long, you're going to have a very pissed off customer, which is bad for the whole experience, bad for the dealership, bad for everybody. And so that's where we've seen a lot of success, is our speed to market has been pretty impressive. So
I know when I was working out of a Lexus store, I was running the eBay store and I was running an internet department, and I would have leasing companies that I'd sell literally truckloads of cars to.
Yep.
A hot product at that time was the RX 350 Sport Package, silver, gray, or black. That's it. So I get a phone call. How many do you have? I have 8 of them. I'll take them. Okay. I had power of attorney. I was literally signing the paperwork myself and handing it to the transporter to take the car. But again, the benefit of dealing with the same people is you know the caliber of who you're getting, because I've seen trucks show up at the dealership, and I've seen people, you know, load up a transporter in short order, and I've seen guys out there for hours loading cars up, and time is money, you know. Now, I know that for the most part, and anybody will attest to this, when you're on the highway, for the most part, they're open trailers, right?
Yep.
I've gotten so many new cars delivered over the years and so many used cars delivered that I don't really see a problem with an open trailer. I guess it's up high enough. I don't know, it's not like a car where you're driving, it's low to the ground, and you got rocks and things coming up and hitting the car or the windshield. Hey, Mark Williamson, time is money. Got to have them fast. I think yesterday is the term I like to use. I bought it today, but I need it yesterday. Yeah, good point. So I don't think it's as much issue with the rock damage and things like that, but why, give me an example, why would somebody want to spend a few extra bucks and get an enclosed trailer as opposed to an open trailer? Because you don't see that many enclosed trailers.
Yeah, there's definitely a much larger number of open trailers on the road at any given time. I think the biggest thing it comes down to this is the car that you're going to transport, what type of car is it? How valuable is it? And I'm not just talking from a money, dollars and cents standpoint. How much care do you really need to take for the car? Don't get me wrong. I mean, most professional drivers who are good quality drivers, they will be very, very careful with any car, open or enclosed. They'll be very careful. They'll be a professional, as they should be with any vehicle. But let's just be totally honest. It would be a dumb idea. I'll just throw it out there. It would be a dumb idea.
How do you really feel?
To put a Porsche 911 that sits about that far off the ground on a open trailer, which most open trailers can't even take that without scraping.
Right.
But it would be a terrible idea to try to do that if you're going any distance. I mean, unless you're going across the parking lot about 100 yards, it's just a terrible idea. And if you can afford a Porsche 911, a dealership or an individual, pay the extra $300 or $400 to put it enclosed. And typically, what we've seen at least is, depending on the distance, of course, it's an extra few $100. An extra $300 to $400 is pretty normal for an open compared to enclosed. But I really just laugh sometimes because we get requests sometimes, not all the time. We get requests sometimes. Hey, can you put my McLaren on an open trailer from Houston to San Diego?
How much is that car? Buck and a half?
No, I can't. Actually, I cannot do that. You know what I mean? Like, it doesn't even make sense. Guys who understand cars, they usually understand these things. Maybe someone who's not super educated, maybe they just need to be educated, and that's part of the conversation. But I think if you just most people, if you just take a step back, look at, yes, the dollar amount, but also just look at the type of vehicle and say, is it worth it? And in most cases, I think that's a very clear decision on, hey, is it worth an extra few $100 to make sure it's super protected, make sure it's not going to scrape going up and down the ramps, make sure it's not going to, have that rare opportunity, because it is rare. But I will say every once in a while, there is a rock that pops up. You never know. There is, a windstorm that somebody's going through and there's a bunch of sand and dirt and dust that, can potentially make some damage on the paint. I mean, it does happen every once in a while, but it's super, super rare. So again, I think it's just evaluating, hey, should this car be enclosed? Should it not? Can it probably go open? And for most people, it's pretty clear. But if they're not clear on that, having a professional educate them on that is typically pretty important. So
I'm thinking some of these cars are $150,000, $200,000. It's not really much of a conversation. Spend a few extra bucks. Mark Williamson says, stack them high and let the rocks fly.
Yeah, put a McLaren on the top rack. It'd be a really good idea. No, it is what it is. I mean, people have their own opinions on stuff, and I get it. I mean, every dollar counts, especially with margins being really thin. Maybe not so much now, but a lot of times margins are super thin. So an extra $300 or $400, I understand how that can help or hurt the deal,
sure. But
for
not on those
cars. It's worth it.
Those cars are a market unto themselves.
Absolutely.
It's like real estate.
Absolutely.
The really cheap houses and the really expensive houses, there seems to always be a market for.
Yep.
So I don't know why somebody wouldn't want to spend it, but like I said, you see very few enclosed trailers, or or you'll see it from, a BMW or some of these other Highline, car brand OEMs that put their stuff in enclosed. And then it's important to set the expectation, right?
Yeah.
We said earlier, boils down to communication. A professional this is all they do day in and day out, and they have a set number of people that they regularly deal with. So you know what to expect from all of the people that you regularly do business with. You know what their on-time record is. You know how they stick to pricing. You know everything you need to know about that person to be able to set the expectation. It's no different than when people bring their car in for service. If you set the expectation as to how long it's going to take, and then you proactively communicate that information to the client, then it's going to cut down on the incoming calls for status updates. Right?
That's right.
Setting the expectation is crucial, especially on the times. And then exactly right. You said that certain times of year or certain times when there are specific events like the Barrett-Jackson stuff,
yep.
The capacity is going to be super tight. And we talked about really not much happens other than when my customer's 4Runner got total loss that time. Not a whole lot happens, but talk to us about damage. There's got to be some damage that happens. And,
sure.
And how is that normally handled, whether it's some gypsy outfit or whether it's a regular reputable place where you know what the insurance are and you know what their policies are? How do they handle claims and issues such as that?
Yeah. Well, like you said, and I think we just mentioned it, I mean, a lot of times, especially on an open carrier, the cars are just going to be a little dusty, a little dirty when they pull them off. But for most of the time, most cases, there's not going to be any real damage, which is great. You can just take it through the detail shop. You're good to go. In the instance or times that maybe there is some damage or maybe something does happen, like a rock pops up, hits the windshield or something of that nature, where it's fairly minor but still has to be handled, still has to be taken care of.
Yeah.
You really have two sides of what happens.
Yeah.
The first side is ideal, and it's like the best case scenario. That driver or that company says, I'll take responsibility for it. I have the right insurance. It was on my trailer. I'll get it fixed. If it's a small dollar amount to get it fixed, typically what we've seen is a lot of them will just pay out of pocket, write a check or take a card over the phone and just get it handled. Because again, it is what it is. It's kind of part of the business, although it's fairly rare. And they'll just get it handled. If they can just pay out of pocket, $500, $1,000 to get it done, a lot of times they will. If it's a little bit more substantial for whatever reason, if they have to get insurance involved and do a claim, that's again part of it. That's why they have insurance. Typically, the best case scenario is that they'll be very proactive and they'll get the ball rolling. They'll take the pictures. They'll get everything involved. Their insurance agent will be notified that day, and it won't get drug on and on and on for weeks and weeks and months, and it'll get handled. The flip side of the coin is what everybody talks about, which is the worst case scenario.
Yeah.
And that's where you have a guy who says, I didn't do it, essentially. For layman's terms, hey, that's not my fault. I'm not going to take responsibility for that. Oh, that chip, that little ding on the door, that spider-webbed windshield, that was already there. Oh, I'm not, I'm done. I unloaded it. I'm on to my next load, and I'm washing my hands of this. So then, yes, you have to go through a lot of recourse, a lot of phone calls, a lot of back and forth. Hey, let me see the BOL. Was there anything noted at pickup? Was there any notes on the BOL? Was there any pictures? I got to see all of these types of things. Now let's talk about delivery. Is there any issues? Obviously if there's a ding and everything, there's going to be. But what does the paperwork look like? And then if the dollar amount is a low dollar amount, that is still like pulling teeth from a worst case scenario standpoint, because that driver doesn't want to pay $800 for an issue out of pocket. And if there's anything he can do to avoid it in this worst case scenario, he's going to avoid it. and he's going to not answer phone calls. He's going to not do what he needs to do. He's not going to be a professional about it because he just doesn't want to pay out of pocket for what he probably knows was his issue. And then if it's a large dollar amount and you have to get insurance involved, that's even worse of a scenario, because a lot of times what we've seen is they're not going to be cooperative with their insurance person to make this thing go smoothly.
Right.
So then you have a whole nother issue with the insurance people being involved. And let me even go a step further, is a lot of times in this worst case scenario, some people that might or might not be involved with central dispatch may not even have the right kind of insurance, may not even have the right kind of coverage, or not enough coverage. If you get a scratch on a Honda, that's different than getting a scratch on a Bentley.
Right.
It costs a little less to get, your $800 paint job fixed on a Honda bumper than it does a $4,500 paint job repair for a little scratch on a Bentley. It's a little different conversation.
Oh,
and
totally.
so having said that, it's two different conversations. It's two different directions. Your best case scenario there is really, again, it kind of just reverting back to it, is if you have a trusted person that you've done business with, you have that relationship with, and you know that they're going to handle the situation right, that is so much more valuable, even if they're even a little more expensive.
Oh, that's cute.
Like me personally, I would pay $100 more for a transporter who I am confident in, who I know will handle all these little things, because there's a lot of little things, than try to pay $100 less for the guy who is in that second category of kind of the worst case scenario. And so, yes, stuff does happen, but if you have the right partner, it goes so much smoother, and they can literally they can help things progress and see things through a lot faster too.
Now, Mark says, as a new car dealer, we see more damage from rail car issues than truck transport. I would imagine. Yeah. And Steve Cheston says the more common damage is during transfer from one truck to another, then they point blame at each other. Now, that leads me to a couple of questions. One is, from an accountability standpoint, I know in drop-off and pickup, we have a partner company. They take 28 some odd pictures of the vehicle while it's in their possession for their customer drop-off and pickup. Okay. Is there any kind of requirement or process in shipping where photos are required by the company, the broker or the company, to establish that, hey, this was the condition of the car when we picked it up? Is there documentation like that in shipping?
There should be. And if you're dealing with the right people, there is.
Okay.
But with probably not the best quality individuals as far as owner operators and or brokers, they don't really see that through. They don't really care too much about it. So if you're dealing with the right people, absolutely, there should be a process. There should be dozens of pictures taken on the front end before he even loads it onto his trailer, before he even touches the car, really.
Yeah.
There should be a full walk-around inspection. There should be a couple dozen pictures taken, maybe even a video or two. We always request that from our drivers is, hey, I need you to text me pictures before you even get in the car.
Smart.
Videos, pictures, walk-around inspection, paperwork on the BOL, notes of anything and everything on the BOL before they even load it onto the trailer every single time. And so, go ahead. Oh, I just was going to say, and then we require them to do the exact same thing at delivery as well. Full walk-around inspection, more video, more pictures, anything noted on the BOL and the paperwork, and then text us those videos and pictures, because we want to see every single thing from before it was even loaded on the trailer to after it was loaded on the trailer. We want to see everything.
That's clean. I mean, that makes sense. Now, given the number of drivers, now we may have a shortage in drivers, yes, but there's still a shit ton of drivers across the country that are hauling vehicles, right?
Oh, yeah.
It's got to be a pretty arduous task to verify that all these people have the proper insurances. Insurance today is kind of a crapshoot. I have to laugh every time there's this one particular insurance company that their big thing is, name your price. I look at that, I laugh every time, because I'm thinking, oh man, these poor bastards, they're just underinsuring themselves. Yeah, they have a cheap rate, but they also have no coverage. Something happens, they've maxed out their coverage and they're running at a deficit. So what's the process in making sure that all of the hundreds, if not thousands of drivers across the country all carry the required, is there a certain required amount, or are there minimum limits that they just need to meet that threshold?
Well, each state operates a little differently in that as far as minimums. What we've seen is that most drivers, and you're right, there's thousands and thousands, maybe even tens of thousands, not sure on that, but thousands of thousands of drivers specifically hauling cars. Whether it's on a 3-car wedge, whether it's on a 9-car hauler, I mean, you name it. Obviously, those are a little different as far as insurance. But what we've seen is almost all of them carry the bare minimum.
It's crazy.
Except for the guys who only do super, super, super high-end exotics and luxury. And that's their only primary, or that's their only business. They won't even touch anything else. And maybe those guys will carry 1.5 or 2 million. But a lot of the other guys are 150,000 in insurance. And a lot of, I'll just say it. I mean, whether it's a broker, whether it's Central Dispatch or anybody else, a lot of folks just don't do a good enough job on really vetting their carriers, who are either A, their drivers and they should have the right insurance, or B, if it's a broker, they just don't do a good enough job of really vetting the company to make sure that they have the required insurance that's going to cover the full load. Because there's a difference between having 3 Hondas or 3 Toyotas or whatever on a 3-car hauler than having a Honda and having a Land Rover and then having, a brand new F-150. I mean, the value is different. And so if one vehicle gets messed up on a low value load, that's different than if a high-end car or a higher value car gets messed up on a different load. And so a lot of these guys, it does vary, but a lot of these companies, a lot of the brokers specifically, they don't do a good enough job of really looking at the insurance and making sure it's right. And then also, I'll just say this about our company. One thing that we've really done a good job of that I think a lot of folks should do is we actually have to be listed as the certificate holder on every single insurance that we'll utilize a carrier for. So we won't even dispatch out an order without being listed as a certificate holder on that insurance, because we need to have that confidence that we're able to work with that insurance company if anything does happen, which again, it's rare, but every once in a while it does.
I mean, that's got to be a huge peace of mind. And again, it's the benefit of dealing with one person or one company as opposed to rolling the dice and hoping for the best. Because let's face it, if the average dealership sells 100 cars, okay, I don't know, they might, maybe not now, but in the normal economy, they might get half those cars at auction. Right, that's 600 cars a year on average that have to be transported per store.
Yep.
So that's a lot of rolling the dice on hoping that A, you don't have an issue, and B, if you do have an issue, are you going to spend time fighting with the transporter?
Right.
Oh, I started the show off with 2 specific examples, real world examples on how these scenarios can play themselves out. I know what I'm doing, and I was able to resolve that issue, no problem. But my friend didn't know what she was doing, was held hostage by it, and ended up paying. And then that taints. And what sucks about that, right, is that bad experience now paints all transporters in her eyes as bad, when that's just simply not the case. I know a lot of great ones.
That's right.
That take care and do things professionally. So to have a few bad ones, and probably more than a few, taint an entire industry because of something that they pulled. I mean, that's, it's like when a dealership does something bad. I feel bad for everybody
Right.
because that puts everybody in the same boat.
That's exactly right. Yeah, there's a lot of really good transporters out there. There's a lot of really good owner operators. There's a lot of good brokers out there. But just like any industry and just like anything, there's also a lot of maybe not so good ones that really kind of put a bad taste in some people's mouth sometimes. And we've kind of just thought about it as, hey, it's our job and it's our duty to really kind of overshadow the bad and really just kind of bring light to what the good side of things, and just give whether it be the dealership as our customer or an individual as our customer, the absolute best experience that they could possibly have, all the way from the communication to the expectations to just the whole thing, giving them a quality experience, professional experience, fair pricing, and really build out that relationship. I think we've done a good job doing that. And I think a lot of the negativity around transporting, we've done a good job of kind of silencing on our end. So,
hey, a couple of things because we're running low on time, but I wanted to play just something from one of our sponsors. So this is something that'll help the dealers. We play this here, and then I've got an announcement to make also. Hey, Ken, what's another tip for dealers to maximize their warranty labor rates?
Well, as we know, if you live in a state and there's 49 of them that have a statute that allow you to collect retail pricing for your warranty claims, and that includes both parts and labor, one of the things that you have to realize is everything in that calculation that is included has to be warranty-like. So in other words, if the warranty pays to put a battery in under the base warranty, you have to include it in your calculation. If the warranty pays for an alignment, you have to include it. Or a bulb. Those types of things have to be included. Even brakes. Some manufacturers pay for brakes under warranty, so therefore you have to include it into your calculation. And we all know that we do those at a highly discounted rate because they're very competitive maintenance items. So one of the ways to do that is you have to maximize your pricing at least for the first 30 to 60 days, because that's how long it takes to get the number of repair orders to do your submission. So for 30 to 60 days, you might want to change your pricing on your alignments. Move the pricing up. Maybe not pay your technicians 2 hours to do an alignment. Pay them an hour instead of 2 hours. Instead of charging $99.95, maybe you charge $129.95 for your alignments. Same thing on brakes. If you pay your technicians 2 hours to put brake pads on and machine the rotors, maybe you only pay them an hour and a half. And if you charge your customers $150 in labor, charge them another $50. It's not going to hurt you in the long run. Same thing on bulbs. If you're going to replace bulbs, they only take a few minutes to replace. Don't even charge any labor. That way you don't even have to include it in your calculation. And we all know bulbs have a huge markup. They should. If you're using a parts pricing matrix, you're probably at 300% markup on your bulbs. So that's going to help you on your parts side. On the labor, don't even charge them any labor. So there's little things like that that can help you maximize your results, and that's one of them today.
Wow, that's a great tip. Thank you. So if you're not getting the rates that you need, that's a tip on ways to maximize it. Another thing that I want to announce is that last month we had a vendor event for one of our groups on the website, dealervendormatch.com. That went so well that it's been requested that we have another. So I'm going to announce here this evening our next vendor showcase that's going to be coming up. Let me just put that on the screen. It's coming up on Thursday, August 26th. So that's coming up next month. And the vendor showcase will basically show the dealers. We're going to be marketing this to dealers across the country, key personnel, dealer principals, general managers, general sales managers, fixed ops directors, parts and service directors, parts managers, service managers. to dealerships all over the country. And basically, having been in the business a long time, we know the pains that they experience. And what the vendor showcase will do is gives you an event where you can see how these specific pains get addressed. So there are sponsorship opportunities available. Direct message me either on YouTube, LinkedIn, or Facebook, and we can talk about that. Or you can use the contact us form on www.dealervendormatch.com to find out more info. Click on the events tab, and like I said, you can use the contact us section to reach out. So that's what's going on here. This hour has happened really fast. It's only 60 minutes, but those 60 minutes seem to go faster and faster with every week that passes. So I appreciate you spending your Sunday night with us. Thank you very much, Nathaniel.
Absolutely.
What I'd like you to do is put your best contact info in the thread. You can't do it through this platform here. You need to do it after the show's over. If you go through LinkedIn, you can put it right in the thread there, because I know, like I'm not unlike most people, that I always remember what I forgot to ask when I had the opportunity to do so. So by having your best contact info in here, it will help people to be able to reach out to you. I know Steve had already commented in the thread earlier that he'd probably want to have a conversation with you regarding transporting some of the fancy cars that they get at that dealership. And I'm sure there will be others. A lot of people watch it on the replay. So if you would put that info in. And so thanks again for being on. I really appreciate it.
Absolutely. Thanks, Paul. It was a pleasure, and appreciate you, and glad to be on.
All right. We'll see you next week on Sunday Night Live.
Thanks, Paul.